Kat,
Hey, Pete.
what's going on?
Good. Good to be here.
We're in the library today.
Beautiful venue.
It's very nice.
We are very lucky to have this in the ServiceNow office.
It's quite quiet. I don't know why we don't use this space more often.
I do, but please don't tell people because this is where I come to hide.
Now I know where I can find you from now on.
Topic for today, Pete. When people hear digital transformation, they picture engineers, developers, coders, CIO, and that's often true. But I thought in this episode, this could be the love letter to all of the change agents and the change makers that sit in different parts of the organization.
Change makers. We like change makers.
We do right now it's the change agents.
Change
Everyone's
agents.
an agent.
Yep, that's true.
So fair to say, we know that transformation is enterprise-wide. It's not just within tech. So from your perspective, why is it that Becky in finance can often be the critical chain or the critical point at which innovation happens and transformation sticks?
Well, I love this concept of Becky. Like, I think when you think about organizations, you think about where the knowledge really sits. It's people like Becky sitting in parts of the organization because they're the people you go to. You know, when things don't work and you're not really sure, I think sometimes we might call them the unicorns of the business. Like, you have them in service centers too. Like, you know, Jimmy over in the corner is like when things don't work, you go and ask Jimmy or Becky because that's the person who knows. And so there's this innate set of knowledge sitting in these people, and for sometimes I think sometimes they're seen as the blockers, but I actually think they're the biggest part of enabling the change. It does take some energy and effort to think about how you get them on board, but the opportunity for them to show and how they can bring that information and make it easier for employees, I think, is really fascinating.
Are they the blockers or are they the innovators? Because they're the ones that have worked out where the problems are and they've just found ways to work around them.
Well, maybe it's the same, but sometimes they're holding back change because you've got to get them into this new way because a core of what their role is going to be different. But now, how do you arm them with a new set of skills or a new set of tools to do it in a different way? And actually, they can be the voice, because sometimes their voices aren't heard. They're trapped inside of I think I may have referred to the permafrost, middle management. Things don't go through, things don't go back up. And so we get this sort of wealth of information sitting there. It's just untapped. And so sometimes their voices are just frustrated. And I think unlocking that, and I've seen this in programs I've run myself, you know, you go out and you walk and you experience with these people and you find out, my God, how much knowledge is like as a program leader and a manager or even a leader of a business, I was never going to know the depth of information some of these people do. So how do you harness it?
We often talk about with customers that IT is the new HR because it feels like 10, 15 years ago, a lot of transformation was being driven through IT. And so your technology organization was naturally the change agents because they were the ones that were going to use the new technology to the organization's benefit. So they were the ones that needed to be part of that journey. A lot of organizations are now shifting, now that they've got their IT organization sorted, they're now shifting into employee experience or employee engagement. And who is the primary leader or the face of the organization to employees? HR. Yeah. And so suddenly your HR leaders are the ultimate decision point as to whether employees are going to get on board. What does that one-stop shop look like? What is the engagement we're going to deliver from recruitment through onboarding while they're at the organization and then when we offboard them? And that entire employee journey, suddenly that now can become the point of transformation or a key differentiator for the organization in market.
Yeah, I think often HR has now been seen as they own employee experience for the organization. Not always true, but I think it's a real and unique opportunity for some HR organizations to go, actually, how are we thinking about that across the breadth? So we're not just thinking about the service of, you know, from a HR point of view, but now what's that experience we want to provide? What is when these programs land, what is the impact on our people and how do we think about it differently?
I was very fortunate about 18 months ago to do an exec study tour. So we went to London and New York. It was absolutely fabulous. Spent some time with some incredible companies.
It was a study tour?
Yes, right. Pete. Study tour 9 to 5. Okay. Wine tour after hours.
Fair enough.
Lots of shopping involved. But it was an incredible experience because we got to meet with a lot of organizations around the world that are on this journey with ServiceNow, but are also just on this journey in general. Yeah. And I think all of them had something in common in that phase one had been, hey, let's transform the way we do technology, the way that we support IT service in the organization. The ones that are a little bit further down the journey had all delivered on employee experience or the HR transformation or to some point on that journey already. But almost all of them described this momentum point where you're sitting around the table and IT and HR are seeing these incredible results that they're starting to get within the way they run their teams or the way that they run their operations. And suddenly finance are popping their hand up, or procurement are popping their hand up and saying,
Me too.
what about us?
Yeah.
We're still running in email and spreadsheets. Can we also please have some automation and AI, or can we have a better way of working so that we know what work is coming into our team and we can manage it in a better way? Legal is another one that's really come to the table.
Yeah.
And I find, an industry that has probably been slower to adopt technology just from a historical perspective, suddenly legal teams are sticking their hand up and saying, well, hang on, we're still running things in spreadsheets and emails too. We'd love a better way of doing things.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are just getting dragged down with these poor work practices that we put up for a long period of time. But sort of back to Becky and the opportunity, I think
Becky's so fabulous.
Yeah, because once they see it, but their opportunity for them to go and tell that story and them to take that now to the legal teams or the HR teams, and that, I think because that's all of a sudden their voice is heard, but they're also now seen as an agent of change. All right, so they're now this vehicle for demonstrating a new way. And so all of a sudden, their own spirits are lifted about the impact they're having in an organization. I think for me, that's the stuff that you see change programs and you think about programs being able to sustain beyond the life of the program, because you spoke about all those resources, they come in, they're hired for a point in time, program finishes, they all go away. And what's left? Everybody else in the org. So if we don't find fundamental ways to unlock that capability and do things differently, I think we're left back with you don't actually sustain the change program beyond phase one.
Do you know what I love about the Beckys of the world?
No, where are we going with Becky now?
Oh, so far. We can run all these incredible change management programs. We can do the best presentations in the world, the most gorgeous videos that are powerful and uplifting and sell the value of technology.
We love a good uplifting video.
Oh, yeah. Great motivational music, good voiceover. But Becky's sitting on the office floor.
Yeah.
And Becky's the one that's just sitting there overhearing the conversations. And when two people start complaining because they don't know where to get something, Becky's the one that pipes up and goes, oh, but you can just find that in the ServiceNow portal. Or no one calls it that. Right. In the real world, they call it, Tech Hub or Finance Hub or whatever they want to call
employee
it.
Portal.
Correct.
Employee Center
But Becky's the one that just prompts people to start using the technology.
Yeah. But I think we've spoken before, if people feel the change and and we've definitely spoken about this, the culture has to foster this idea that it's okay to speak up, and people and you go allow people that moment to demonstrate the change and go, actually, it's really easy. Let me show you how to do it. Because when you do that, and people, both as leaders, both as Becky, as people start that little momentum wheel starts to spin really, really quickly over time when you start to get that right. But if you don't find those people and you don't find those promoters, that wheel can take an infinitely much longer to spin up the speed you're trying to get to.
I feel like we're also very fortunate that we work in a technology space where we can bring the business to the table, and they don't need to be able to write code to understand the way in which the ServiceNow platform, can help them unlock value. Because as soon as you understand a business process, which they do better than anyone.
Yeah, correct.
And then you understand the way in which technology can help you do that process better. You don't need to write code. You don't need to understand how the technology works. You just need to understand business. And so suddenly we're empowering these Beckys of the world to sit back, look at the way business is operating today, and find those high value use cases where there are serious bottlenecks that the business may not even be aware of that can very simply be removed.
Yeah, I think there's two parts for that for me that are really important. One is that, this advent of technology, this area of technology we're sitting in right now, has really lowered that barrier for entry. You don't need to spend the 4 years at university learning to code to do some of the things we're doing. You can draw the process on a whiteboard, take a photo, and let the system turn that into work. So I think that's one part. That barrier of entry is much different. And I think also then, for Becky and that ability to be able to promote that change, about to take her voice forward, again, it comes for me is the culture of the organization has to support that. And I think when you get those two elements right, the ability to really shift about how we think about transforming and sustaining beyond that sort of first phase of the program, that's when, for me, that's the really exciting thing we see out of this.
And the business is so good at understanding how people work.
Yeah.
They are perfectly positioned to understand the way in which we can transform the way people are working.
Yeah, but we've got to give people, this. Yes, but I think that, but doing it in a way for organizations to feel like we have this conversation about, I want you to go really, really fast and really, really safely. And it applies to lots of concepts, but having a platform even like out the ServiceNow platform, knowing that the data is not going to lease, you're not creating more risk for the organization. You can burn these applications down really, really quickly, but you can't have a governance and control that's the handbrake to the organization. You've got to allow this sort of test and learn cycle. Let people spin these things up, see what value they're going to get out of it. You can measure the value really simply now. And if it's not working, we can shut it down and move on. But what we've not done is stifle the organization and locked it down in a way that it can't actually start to find new capacity, because there's not a company I talk to that doesn't go, hey, if I could free up 15%, 10% of my people's time to focus on some of this other high value work, find me an organization wouldn't love to have some of that.
I feel like that's a great example of how we empower these non-technical teams to innovate. What are some other great examples of how we empower them?
Yeah, so I think big point is, how do you measure the impact of change? And so when you focus on the outcome, like I remember I was back in my days and we were running this change program and we were trying to think of how are we going to measure success? And we know during the program, things are going to get hard. So we knew we needed to have a framework. And so we came up with three simple measures. One was, have we made it easy? So, and how much level of automation have we achieved? And are we getting cost out? And we use those three dimensions at all times to make the decisions. And so whenever we were looking at the impact of a change or the impact of what we were doing, if we couldn't understand what it was going to do to those metrics, then we just said, we're not doing it until we realized. And sometimes that would take us longer to work through. But ultimately, when we know we don't get that change moment right, people will fall back to old ways. And then the recovery of that position is so much harder. So I think those are the sort of things, if we get those elements right, that becomes really important. But it'd be interesting, Kat, in other conversations, what else have you seen more recently that people doing in this space?
I've always been very passionate about measuring the value of success, measuring the outcomes that you've got from technology. I am not a fan of just implementing technology for technology's sake. If you're not creating outcomes for the business and for the people involved, why bother?
Yep.
And I think that's even more important when we're empowering people who sit within the business, because they're not measured on technology success.
No.
And I think there's always this natural tension in the organization, particularly for what some people might call back office or mid office functions, which are often seen as a cost to the business, not a revenue generating activity. Whereas we all know gut feel is, if they didn't exist, the business can't operate. Yeah. But how do you draw the line between what they do and delivering on growth of the business? And the type of transformation that we do, the way in which we can take a business process, automate it, streamline it, accelerate it, orchestrate the work around it, and then measure the difference, correct, right, of how long it took to do the order to cash process before versus how long it takes us to do it now. Those teams that were often considered a cost to the business can now draw a correlation between, hey, we've accelerated the order to cash process by 87%. Yeah. And this is the X tens of millions of dollars that we've delivered on the top line growth because we got you to cash faster. Yeah. And I think when the businesses start to see that they can measure the value of what they bring to the organization in a better way and build their brand, it helps them get on board.
Yeah, I think measuring the impact is super important. You apply the same to self-service. You can create a very easy baseline of what are we doing today. Often when you get it right, you're going to see a greater level of demand. But if you've got high levels of self-service, then the ability to actually meet that demand in a much easier way. So you're actually freeing up huge amounts of capacity across your organization.
Which brings me back to Becky, Pete.
Because back to Becky now.
Do you know what Becky really doesn't like doing?
You're going to tell me, I'm sure.
Answer the same question over and over and over again from 26,000 different employees.
I think it's a definition of insanity, isn't it?
Well, that's doing the same thing. Yeah. Sometimes you don't get a choice. You have to answer the same question.
Same question all the time. So, yeah, I think, Where are you going now with this one?
Well, Becky loves self-service because Becky's not having to answer the same question 26,000 times because the technology will probably flag to Becky, hey, we've got a better way of answering this particular question and helping employees self-serve. So that's not going to come to you, Becky.
Yeah. Now Becky gets to do all
Becky's
of that.
a superstar.
Yeah, but and the best part is if we give Becky the tools and the skills, now she can build those not for one, but for 2 or 3 or 4 of those cases. Now look how much more capacity across the enterprise do we start to really unlock for all the Beckys in the organization.
I think it comes back to the fact that successful transformation ultimately comes down to someone being able to recognize that there is a better way of doing it and then having the drive and the ability to roll up their sleeves and change the way of working.
Yeah, when you were just touching on this before, like, the age-old thing of, hey, I've got a great piece of technology hunting for a problem. That's not the way we've got to do it. You've got to understand the impact. You've got to understand the outcome and then work backwards into what is that technology going to enable? What is it going to do? And we've got to think about not just for the organization, nor just for the department, but what does it mean for Becky down in finance in that role so she can go, right, I actually see the benefit of the change, but also recognize how much of what I am doing is not changing so I can leapfrog into what I want to do next.
So I started this episode, Pete, making a grand statement that this was going to be our love letter to the unsung heroes. So do we wrap up by thanking the Beckys in finance,
absolutely,
in HR, in payroll, in procurement, in legal, in workplace, in all the business functions that are coming to the table that maybe had been the unsung heroes in the past, but we see them, we value them, and we want to arm them with as much capability as we possibly can to make them the heroes in their story.
Yeah, and we want them to share those stories and those moments, and we love connecting those people into different conversations so other organizations can benefit from the Becky and how they've done it in one organization so we can multiply that into other organizations. So
if we ever create merch for this podcast, there's going to be a Becky t-shirt.
I thought we were going with minions actually, but Becky t-shirts work too.
Becky can be a minion. I'm all good for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Kat.
See you next time.
See you next time.